Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Games Industry Executive Summary. This is Casey, and I have a special guest today, the beautiful Patrick Rose. Unfortunately, both Manu and Dave couldn't make it today, so we have a guest here to fill in. We're both extremely unprepared, which is fine. I told Patrick here that we're doing a casual conversation about the news. And so, Patrick, welcome on board, by the way. Really happy to have you. You're one of the Mighty Diamonds, been with us for almost a year at this point. So I'm really looking forward to having this conversation.
Thank you very much for having me here on this very spontaneous occasion, basically. So, absolutely not prepared, as you said, right? Let's just hop into that.
We'll just jump into it. Yeah. But Patrick, obviously, I think consistency is really important, and that's why, it's important for me that we can produce these on a weekly basis, and we actually have that rhythm going on. But before we do that, I forgot to introduce you properly. I mean, you're a game analyst. You are expert in user psychology. You have a couple of clients that you're working with today across multiple facets. If it's design, if it's a business of games, your experience historically, Bandai Namco, most prominently worked on a lot of the From Software games. Some other. Did I miss anything you'd like to add?
Well, I think most importantly to know about me is that I'm basically a games researcher. I do understand why people play games, what makes games engaging, what makes games monetize. I can help my clients to make more money with their games. This is what I mainly do. And for this, I also need to be a market expert, a product expert, and all these things. So that's the most important things you need to know about me, I think. And maybe that is something interesting. Right now, I'm in the Philippines, by the way. So this is a very global kind of call. I was visiting the PGDX here, and what I can see now is they have very talented people over here. Just they have so much trouble to reach out to the rest of the world. Maybe that's worth mentioning. And I enjoy the Philippines very much right now.
By the way, so this is your evening, right? It's our morning.
Yeah, exactly.
I really appreciate your time today. And I completely forgot you were traveling. But really appreciate your time here. There was actually, by the way, a mishap this morning. The Guy's newsletter went out live today. I took it down, but obviously the people who received the news, you're basically listening to this podcast one day later, but that's fine. But yeah, Patrick, I'll jump into it, and then we'll take it one step at a time and read it together. I'm gonna go through, what we do is we tend to okay, what is interesting? So the Games Industry Executive Summary, you already know what that is. We send out an email on Friday mornings, basically just summarizing what is the most important things you need to know in our industry. And based on that, we thought it would be a good idea to just do a podcast where we can dive a bit deeper into each item. And like I mentioned before, both Manu and Dave usually read these and have more in-depth knowledge about what's going on. But today we're almost doing it together in a way. Let me open up and share my screen as well, so we can have a look at what the guys decided is important this week. So here we go. Oh, give me a second. There we go. So on the highlight side, Activision Blizzard again boosted Xbox's earning results while hardware declined. So the hardware decline we've been reading about for a while, or rather, people usually in the old console days or console wars days rather used to compare PlayStation and Xbox. Obviously, Nintendo operates in their own realm since the Wii U, or the Wii rather. But Patrick, do you have any thoughts about this? Not to put you on the spot. Obviously, we were both reading it at the same time.
Yeah. Well, actually, first, I think this kind of headline is a little bit misleading, since the hardware didn't decline. I mean, people didn't dump their Xboxes, right? So what declined is the revenue that was made through the hardware. So it means Microsoft basically had less sales of the Xbox. So basically, the user base remains more or less the same or increased still, right? It's not contradicting that Activision Blizzard is making more money there if they just keep improving on their monetization strategies and everything, right? So this is the first thing I have to think about when I read this.
So this is why I love Germans, Patrick. Okay, that's one. Patrick is German, by the way. But also, like, I didn't know that. Like, I wouldn't have put time to read that. So I really appreciate that, Patrick, putting that out. Well, what's your thoughts about I mean, obviously, Activision Blizzard, a huge publisher, was absorbed fully by Xbox or Microsoft. Was it last year or this year? I forgot. Was this year or last year?
I think last year.
Last year. We're gonna see Call of Duty this year launch, not necessarily exclusively, but be available to Game Pass users on the higher tiers, which is gonna hopefully do some numbers for them on Game Pass. But I'm not sure if there's anything else we should take away from this. It's very obvious, like, absorbing a big publisher will increase your earnings. Anything else you want to add on that one, Patrick?
I'm also just reading the article. I mean, it's the Game Pass remains an interesting thing. I think this is always worth to mention. It's one of the biggest selling points for Xbox users right now, right? And that one is getting more expensive now, or it got more expensive. So that is, on the other hand, a little bit of a problem as well. People are a little bit upset of that. So, however, what I must also say, like, Xbox is having trouble for a very long time already. I mean, Sony is simply having the upper hand here for quite a while now, for a very long time, globally, even in the US. And I mean, it is getting more and more difficult for Xbox and Microsoft here. That's for sure. That's what I can say.
What do you think the strategy should be? I mean, I know this is not what we're here to do today, but I'm actually surprised because, okay, so they got Bethesda, which is ZeniMax and all the other companies, and unfortunately, they shut down a couple studios this year who were doing some really good work. Maybe not selling gazillions, bazillions, but they were still putting out some really good content that is needed for a platform to grow. And then we have Activision Blizzard, and that entails also mobile expertise. As an example, King. I'm sure I'm missing some other companies and publishers that they absorbed the past 3-4 years. But what should be the strategy here, or what could help Xbox gain more momentum?
Actually, does it say how Activision Blizzard boosted their revenues in the article? Did you see that?
I haven't read that, but I'm assuming it's just an added, like, you're adding revenues that weren't there from before, right?
Right. My guess is that most of the revenues are coming from the service part of the games. So meaning additional monetization methods and so on. It's not so much the premium sales. And this is a trend we are seeing for many years now. And that kind of aligns with also overall console strategy. Consoles might, a lot of people are going to hate what I'm going to say now. Consoles might die out soon. And I don't like that myself because I love my consoles. Unless they have a USP that is really of significance. Like the Nintendo Switch, for example, has its super high accessibility still. And consoles were known for being very accessible gaming platforms, right? You just like put in your game, turn it on, everything works, and that's it. It's not that easy anymore these days. Things get more complicated and stuff. Unless you're having a Switch console, that remains still quite accessible. And if people are more open for a little bit more complexity and so on, they also don't mind downloading the games. They are more on that digital side and so on. And therefore, all this more physical stuff, the expensive things, are declining for quite a few years now. And that might go along with consoles overall. And again, I really hate to say that because I love my consoles. So what was the question actually?
The question was about their strategy on how to increase their let's say market share.
Yeah, right. Market share is a lot of focus on games and service, maybe even free to play, drop the initial price point and so on, because this is still a big obstacle for a lot of players to play a game. Yes, go ahead.
Patrick, interesting enough. I mean, you remember the days when consoles were sold at a loss?
Mm.
I know that they don't do that anymore. They kind of like most today they sell them either at break even or they make like maybe $50 max per unit. But back in the day, they used to sell consoles at a loss, obviously to increase their user base,
right,
and make up for it through the software. So as of right now, I think nobody's done any price cuts on their hardware.
That is interesting. I haven't really thought about that, honestly, but why wouldn't they drop the price point of their hardware? Well, usually you see that when they are really trying to establish a brand, when the brand is more important than just kicking out the stuff. And they have sold a lot of units. Both Sony and also Microsoft, they have been selling a lot of consoles in total. Even though the overall share of Sony is much bigger than the Xbox One, but still, maybe there's just enough consoles out there, and they don't want to like lose on like the brand and everything, and want to keep it valuable. I guess it's rather this, and that would be my guess, at least, why they would not drop the price point. Sales are good enough.
Let me help you out quickly then on the console hardware sales, and this is VG charts, not really 100% reliable, of course, but we're seeing the PS5 almost at 60 million, and the Xbox X and S series at 28, which is not really, but that's not really bad in my opinion. I mean, obviously,
in absolute numbers, this is fine. It's just a share thing, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I predicted that Xbox is going to have a hard time, especially once PS4 hit and I took away all the mistakes that they made with the PS3, and obviously Xbox had they had significant success with the 360 era. But the one couldn't really make it, and then after that, the momentum on the PlayStation side has just continued, and they kind of avoided doing some mistakes. If it's okay with you, Patrick, let's move on to the next item.
Yeah.
And see what we have there. Bungie eliminated. That's not my words. This is the article. Eliminated 17% of its workforce. I'm personally not surprised, but I would love to hear your thoughts about that.
Well, first of all, it would be really interesting to understand who they let go, right? And often when they let go people, it is people that are not that much required anymore. For example, I'm not sure like how the production on Destiny looks like at the moment, but apparently they're coming to a close if it comes to content and so on. So I'm not sure like what the big next steps are in terms of creating content for Destiny. And if they don't necessarily need these people like 100% workforce anymore on creating new content, and just are focusing rather on keeping the game alive and focusing on maintenance and improving everything that is there already, then it could make sense to let a few people go there. And especially these kind of people who are really, really expensive, the people making the content, these are among the most expensive people you can hire, right? That is something I could imagine. On the other hand, if you kick out, well, that sounds very rough now, but if you kick out 17% of your workforce, that means you will do much better this year in terms of profits, most likely, like just like that. And
yeah, I never understood that thought process, but obviously from a shareholder perspective. But obviously this is not. And sorry, Patrick, for cutting you off, but I can't help myself reading this part, which is obviously you are also eliminating some roles that are being integrated into the larger organization, which is Sony PlayStation.
Right.
And I'm reading here that they've integrated 155 of their roles, roughly 12% of the company, into SIE, which is not unexpected, especially if if the company is having a good relationship with the main owner.
All right. I mean, that sounds to me like a really good explanation. In fact,
Yeah.
obviously, if you can share workforce, and why would you pay double? I know these things always sound harsh, but I kind of understand business decisions behind these things. And I've been well, how should I call it? I've been victim of something like this myself one day, right? I also had to go through layoffs, and I was laid off too. And I know how that feels. But on the business side, well, these are companies in the end, and they're all focusing on capital, and that's their job to do that. And if this is the best way for the moment, the best decision for the moment, then so be it. And
By the
that
way,
that doesn't mean it's always the best decision for the long run. I understand that part, though.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say there is another thing that I've noticed more and more lately been talked about, which is, well, and not just with big companies, but also with small companies and VCs looking to invest. What I've noticed is value in small teams that can do big things. And I think, if I remember correctly, Bungie is one of those studios that blew up significantly, more than they actually need to do. And based on what they're producing and delivering, I think it makes no sense to be that big. And I'm not sure if it was like 1,000 people, maybe a bit more or less at Bungie. But looking at the stories from the last couple of weeks, where like Valve is like 400 people,
Yeah.
Larian is a small studio. I think it was 200, something like that, if I'm not mistaken. But the trend of having these small teams, and especially with the democratization of video game creation, you can be much small. And also, obviously, the big trends of the past 2, 3, 4 years of outsourcing companies that can provide different or various services ranging from art to sound, etc. You don't need to have every single expert profession in-house. You can actually outsource a lot of that stuff and just focus on the core of your product. So I'm hoping that people and companies can make smart decisions in hiring and expanding, rather than blowing up and then having to cut down, which is devastating to the people mainly, and impacting those people's lives, especially people who need to move from one country to another. That could be devastating.
Oh yeah.
I'll move on to the next item, if that's okay with you, Patrick.
Sure, we got so many, right?
We have a couple. But this one is close to me because I used to work on Battlefield. And I've had some criticisms of Battlefield and how Battlefield games are made. But in this specific, and I'll share that with everybody as well, in this specific news piece, we have, I think this is the EA CEO, which I assume is still Andrew Wilson. EA CEO calls the next Battlefield one of the most ambitious projects in our history, as all hands get to work on a Battlefield universe. Now, I want to warn people about this from the perspective of, if you remember, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago when they announced they're going to do a universe thing, and they're going to do mobile, and they're going to do like all these different things, and then they canceled them, more or less. 20 was it 20? What's the last Battlefield game? Oh, I should know this. 2042 did not really perform the way it did on launch day. The team worked on it, made it much better. They brought a lot of people back. You can see that on the Steam database. Let me share my screen here as well, and I'll let you comment if you have any thoughts about this.
Well,
I'll help you out a bit, Patrick.
yeah.
Because obviously, again, I'm being very transparent here with everybody. I'm putting you on the spot today. I tried to get another guest as well to be here, but I couldn't. But I guess just to go back on this story again, and tie to what we were talking about before, less is more. I truly believe, in some instances and games, you need to go back and okay, why do people play these games? And who do I need to make this experience work? And I feel like it's one of those things where, okay, they set the bar at a certain level and they can't achieve that anymore. And they just need to go bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's like, okay, is bigger better? Do you have any thoughts about that specifically then, Patrick? Or tied to any other games you might see done this mistake, rather?
So when I think of Battlefield these days, and I must say I didn't play a Battlefield game for a while now, but my feeling about it is that they are kind of not quite having a proper identity anymore. Not the typical Battlefield identity they are used to have. Like there was some very clear image in my head a few years ago when I thought of Battlefield. These days, I'm not so sure anymore. What are they? Are they now? Is the campaign still there, or doesn't it exist anymore? Is it of any relevance these days, or is it becoming more of a free-to-play thing now? And also, it doesn't seem so serious anymore. Some of the skins I see look more like Fortnite skins or anything like this. So I feel like they might be struggling. And again, I'm not that deep into the Battlefield topic, but they might be struggling with the target groups. They're not sure, like, do they target the classic millennial type of gamer, or are they now targeting the Gen Z type of gamer, trying to get them on board? But apparently that doesn't seem to work very well either. So it's kind of something between trying everything on every platform and at the same time apparently not being great at any of these things. So I got the feeling that maybe a little bit of consolidation would be a good thing for them, and focusing on one really, really good thing, something that makes them specifically very unique, because in the past they have been unique. They have been known, even next to games like Call of Duty or anything like that, they had their own spot, their own USPs, right? Like the huge maps, the destruction, the many players in one map and all that stuff. But that is gone now. Yeah.
You are 100% on the nail on this one. And this is coming from a former brand manager on Battlefield, right? EA did hire the former Call of Duty general manager to lead the Battlefield franchise, which is interesting, right? But I think you are on point, because historically speaking, when I used to work on Battlefield 7 years ago, almost-ish, I mean, the target audience is a bit older. Battlefield was not a simulation game like Arma, and it wasn't a all-out action arcadey shooter. A bit closer to Call of Duty. It was somewhere in the middle, and I think it did have that serious. There was playfulness, but it did have mostly a serious, like people were nerding on, like the details in the guns and the details of the tanks and all the equipment and all that stuff, right? And I feel like the past maybe 4 years, we've seen a decline of that, which might impact the audience, of course. And I do believe, and I usually say this to people, I do believe if somebody wants to enter the Battlefield-esque space, there is an opportunity. And I don't think anybody's looking at that. But very good point, Patrick. So let's look at some other items that we have on the news. The Olympics seems to have ditched Mario and Sonic series to explore NFTs and esports. That's extremely weird. And also, I want to be careful with the misleading headlines again. I'll share the screen. I'm not sure if you saw this one, but you're a bit of a NFT crypto, not necessarily expert, but you do have your eyes on it and know what's going on in that world.
Yeah. I'm actually an investor in blockchain tech and NFTs as well, and I'm also working on some NFT games. And again, I will have a lot of haters after this call.
I think I have the wrong link here. I'll find a new link, but go for it.
But let me have a look at this too.
No.
Yeah, I also got the wrong link.
Mario and Sonic. Let's see if we find the story on this thing. Oh, here we go. Eurogamer. So this is very weird.
Let me see that on the screen. Actually,
it seems like it's partially a opinion piece as well. Esports, by the way, the Olympics did. I think, is it this year they allowed esports, or?
I think so. But it's absolutely not noteworthy. It's very sad.
It is very sad in a way. But it's going to be interesting to see how long this actually, if it stands the test of time, is probably the correct way of saying this.
Yeah. So first of all, the headline sounds a little strange to me, because why would you? I mean, what kind of decision would that be? Like, either you do the Mario and Sonic series thing, or you do NFTs and esports. That doesn't feel like an either or question to me here.
Yeah.
So I would have to read this a little bit, honestly, to understand what's going on.
But it seems like all of this is electronic based, or like, you know, software or digital based.
Okay, if this is really how the Olympic Committee sees these kind of things, then that would be really, really sad. Like, everything electronic, we can only do one electronic thing, and that's it. No, like extra cognitive load for anything else. That would be extremely sad.
Okay, so by the way, I'll add to you here. Seems like I don't know what the IOC is. I'm assuming it's like a committee for the Olympics. They chose not to renew the license with Nintendo and Sega, which is very weird. And I feel like I mean, those games were pretty a good promotional piece for a young generation to get into the Olympics and get more active, maybe.
Absolutely, and those weren't bad games either. So,
and here it says we wanted. So this is a quote from Lee Cooker. They wanted to look at other partners and NFTs, in esports. Sorry, not to put Lee Cooker here on the spot. Maybe that's a former or current person at Nintendo or Sega.
Okay, I get it. I still don't really understand why they would ditch Mario and Sonic, but on the NFT side, I must say, and I'm not happy that they choose the term NFT here. I would rather if I were them, I would investigate if there's any potential for decentralized tech, because I'm a big believer if it comes to decentralized technologies, or let's say decentralized methodologies even, because we can go around a lot of very annoying things with decentralized tech. But does it really need to be NFTs? I'm not sure if it's that thing. It doesn't need to be a coin. It doesn't need to be NFTs. It can be just something from the world of Web3 decentralized tech that could help a lot. Even if it's just simple things like selling tickets. With decentralized tech, you can go around so many issues you have with selling tickets, including frauds or like secondary sales and all these kind of things. So there's a lot of potential. Well, I'm not sure if it makes sense to connect it to esports and gaming here, but I can see that this technology would bring a lot of potential for the Olympic Games.
Okay. Then, Patrick, I want to move to the next item, which is very interesting. That just caught my eye, by the way. And I'll also continue to share my screen here and show you the news item, which is Steam demo overhaul includes standalone store pages, user reviews, and wishlist notifications. I know you're a bit of a Steam expert in a way as well, because you do always follow and want to understand what's going on the platform. Any thoughts about this?
Well, I'm just like looking for the link myself, but let me just check here. Steam demo overhaul includes standalone store pages. Right, that thing.
So the most notable addition is that the studios can now set up separate store pages for their free demos, where they can post screenshots, trailers, and content. These pages will also automatically link to the full game store page. So it seems like they're separating or allowing people to set up a demo separate from the original product.
I'm just thinking that through. What would the advantages be of the?
Here it is. I just found the quote, by the way. One factor that may come into play, and this is a quote. One factor that may come into play is if your demo ends up having a bunch of negative reviews, it might be less appealing. So that's an item. I'm seeing, by the way, I'm assuming you have to pay to set up the demo product as well, but that's not it's $150. It's not a big deal. But what's interesting, there's also a flip side to this, and this is another the continuation of the quote. If players are loving your demo, the positive reviews signal to other players may boost interest in the full game. But but they're treating the demo as a free game on Steam.
Right. Okay. That's going to be a really interesting one. We will have to see how that works out, and well, when we actually apply that stuff, right? So, but my first thought is it could be a conversion issue. Meaning, I like a game, I like this free game, the demo, and now I want to play the full version of that. Okay, where can I find this now? Oh, now I'm busy. I have something else to do. It's too late. I didn't purchase it, and now I forgot about it. So it is an extra step in the conversion funnel potentially that might cause issues. On the other hand, about the reviews, yes, if the demo is not great yet, it doesn't really perfectly represent the actual game later on, which is much better, then it is a good, nice cushioning of bad reviews. I trust that, but honestly, like, in how many occasions is that truly the case? You want to have a demo, not necessarily for the sake of testing the game. You want to have the demo to show people that your game already is badass and they should play it, and well, convert them right away. So I have really mixed feelings about it. We would really have to test this out and understand if this is a rather good or not so good thing.
Patrick, can you remind me? Can you deep link or like let's say I have a demo or I have a game. Can I have a deep link to another game? Let's say Red Dead Revolver going to Red Dead Redemption, or FIFA 2023 going to FIFA 2024, or something like that. Is that possible?
On the Steam page?
Yeah.
I don't think that is valid. You would have to go through the
store and search for it,
basically.
Oh, now I see. Because I thought there was something like that where it allowed you to kind of like
I'm not quite sure myself right now.
Okay.
But I could also imagine that this could also cause a lot of issues when people refer to games that are not really connected and kind of try to get some advantages through that or anything like this.
Okay.
I might be mistaken there, so I'm not sure.
I think there are some things you can do, but I'm currently unsure. We'll have to check that out and report back. Let's move on to the trends, Patrick. So there is some sad news for some players. Xbox 360 has its digital store shut down.
Right. I mean, come on, how old is that console?
The Xbox 360 launch.
So
2005.
The thing is, the people who are upset about these kind of things are usually very loud and usually not very many.
I'll preface, it says your gamers mourn.
Yeah. Well. So yes, it is a thing people love to talk about, and especially if you still love your hardware and stuff, this is just another point to bring up that digital stuff is bad and physical stuff is good and so on, right? But in the end, look at the player numbers. Who is truly still using that store at that time? If it was like a significant amount of people, they wouldn't shut it down. That's just the thing. That doesn't make sense then. So probably, I mean, my guess is that's probably less than 20,000 people still using that, maybe even much less. But yeah, maybe I'm wrong.
No, I'm sure it's also in maybe countries where Xbox doesn't make money on that. This reminds me, by the way, of, if you remember the story of, I'm not sure if it was Halo or Gears. There was a game from a couple years back that had a multiplayer session that was ongoing. And
that was Halo.
That was Halo. Was it Halo 2, I think, or something like that?
Probably Halo 2, I guess.
But it was like a session that was open, and if that session was closed, then nobody would ever be able to play Halo 2 multiplayer or something like that.
And I get goosebumps when you tell the story again. I love that story. On the other hand, it got shut down in the end because people didn't play that session anymore. And in the end, it's all about, if people use it, it will stay alive. And if people don't use it well, there's not really need for keeping it alive.
I know that there are some people working on some type of preservation projects for games. I'm not sure if this is the type of preservation they're looking into, and maybe mostly physical or games that people have forgotten about. But I feel like it's a bit sad that people can't just jump into a multiplayer session with an old game they used to like. But I also understand, of course, why we want to do something like that. So here's an interesting thing that I think you have a lot to talk about because of your background and expertise. And I'll share the screen again. But so this is the headline. Activision secretly experimented on 50% of the Call of Duty players by decreasing skill-based matchmaking and determined players like SBMM, I don't know what that is, even if they don't know it. Maybe it's, I'll have to check what that is, SBMM. But in any case, this is a news story, not for us, obviously, because we know why you want to do this, that type of experimentation and A/B testing. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, A/B testing is something absolutely normal, and it's done in so many games all the time. So I'm not even sure how this is worth a news article. It's probably, well, I can feel like sometimes these things come out and then it happens to be a thing suddenly to some people, and they didn't really know it. It's a thing all the time. You got the skill-based matchmaking, right? SBMM.
Skill-based, yes.
Yeah.
Reddit, thank you.
So the interesting thing is, and this is actually also something I advise my clients, is in psychology, there's something called the competence factor, which is really, really important for engagement and motivation to keep playing a game and to keep players in the flow. If you want to keep the competence up, what you need to do is keep people in that flow, meaning it shouldn't be too frustrating, and it also shouldn't be too boring, too easy, right? Not too difficult, not too easy. That is matchmaking. This is why we have matchmaking. Always keep them somewhere which is kind of on that level where your skills are, right? And we need to test this in games. And it doesn't matter if it's a single-player game or multiplayer game. We need this at any time. And in single-player games, what we can do is we can have something like adaptive difficulty modes. So the game adapts to your skill at best in a way that you will never notice, like Resident Evil 4 did, as an example. And people love that game. They got into a great flow in Resident Evil 4 without anyone noticing that the game actually becomes easier when you're not that good at it, which is great design in the end. We don't like to hear that, but it's awesome design. This is why the game is so much fun. We need to do the same thing with, skill-based matchmaking, for example. We have to create great matchmaking systems, which is really, really difficult, and we need to test around. And of course, A/B tests, like test with 50% of your audience, another thing that you test with another 50% of your audience, is something really important for that. So this is, if anyone thinks this is a scandal, no, it's not. This makes our games better, in fact, and more enjoyable.
Yeah, I don't think the people listening to this necessarily think it's a scandal. I think it's probably a good highlight for the people who don't do that type of thing to actually start, and not necessarily just about matchmaking, but also any other facets of your game to experiment and see maybe there is a better way of doing something. And on the lowest levels, it could be like swapping the color of a specific button that you have in the game that you want players to pay attention to, that you feel is important. Then that could be a thing that you could try out and see if, okay, does this change anything? Does it help the players in any way or
Absolutely. Form? And this is so much more efficient and cheaper than having a huge survey going on with a few 10,000s of users. Here you got millions of users right away. You have data in 3 days.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Patrick, continuing on the trends, I want to jump to another interesting thing here, and I'm sure you have some comments about this, which is the community manager for Palworld saying that they believe it's not healthy for the industry if players stick to one game. Now, obviously, from a competitive point of view, that is very agreeable. And then they say, spend as much money on indies as you can. Any thoughts about this?
Yeah, I mean, if there's only one game being successful, obviously that's not good for the industry. That's good for that one game and one company. But something that is good for the industry means like when there's a lot of companies being able to flourish within the industry, right? Otherwise, it's not an industry. It's a monopoly, maybe. And yeah, I agree to that. Especially these days, I see a lot of money going towards the indie studios, not necessarily from the investors, but from the actual gamers. And I love to see that. I love that we get back to this, like we embrace different type of games, unique type of games, the artsy type of games. These are, by the way, also the games I love the most, the games that try to be somewhat different and create something new. And that is a great thing. And what we will see most likely is that some of these games will become very big and will be, well, maybe copied, or a lot of different studios will be inspired by this, and then there will be new genres coming up, and then all that stuff that looks unique now will be a very regular thing in 10 years, and then this thing will just happen again, that the small studios will have to pop up again, come up with new ideas, and this is basically the circle coming back every few years, I think.
By the way, Patrick, I'm very curious because another quote here on the same article, they're saying, I don't think this really serves anyone to kind of push gamers to just play the same game day in, day out, which got me to think about, because back in the day when working on live service, I was very much into the mindset of I need to make sure people come back, because I was controlling the Battlefield series from a live service perspective in terms of engaging with the players. And some of my goals were, okay, how can I make sure people log in more often? I'm in a different mindset today because I don't believe in that anymore. I believe more in the long-term relationship you have with their players. And obviously, a lot of these mechanics have historically speaking been coming from mobile. So as an example, on Call of Duty, Modern Warfare, the new Modern Warfare, and forward, and once Warzone became a thing, all these elements of, like, your daily tasks and missions and quests and things that you need to do to get a small progression or whatever. Do you think that is that a healthy thing, or should developers who are working on live service games maybe be thinking a bit differently about approaching it?
That's actually one of my favorite topics if it comes to game design and user psychology. There's a very typical trap almost every product manager falls into, and that is, well, what you say, like the daily reconnection to the game and stuff. What will we do in order to achieve this? That people come back on a daily basis. Well, we have something like login bonuses and stuff. We give out rewards. Rewards are extrinsic incentives. Extrinsic incentives undermine intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is the thing we consider as fun and passion when we really love a game and not come back for the daily login bonus. With giving out too many rewards and stuff and having too many rewarded things in the game, we destroy this passion, this fun, and it doesn't come back. That is, in psychology, it's called the over-justification effect. So it's a huge trap, and it looks good in the beginning because your KPIs will be improved with the login bonus. But if you keep doing that, in the long run, your game will die. And that happens all the time. You see that usually after 2 or 3 years, like numbers are declining and nobody knows what to do anymore and stuff. It's because you already destroyed the passion and the actual fun of the players. They come back for your rewards and not for the actual fun. So I absolutely agree with you. And there is this psychological explanation for that, which leads directly to business in the end.
Thank you so much for that. I have so much else to say about that, and I did put out a piece not long ago, praising Elden Ring specifically in terms of, and calling Elden Ring more or less, it is a live service game, but I had a lot of people disagree about that. And I think for me, it's like, just the mindset. How are you treating your customers long term and having that relationship? If not in this game, over a franchise, over a brand. But that's almost an entire completely different podcast on itself. Jumping into the rumors, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Dr. Disrespect.
Oh yeah,
he's had a history of scandals and stuff, and I think this is like the 4th time he quit streaming or something like that, and now he's back. I'm not sure if you want to add anything to this piece. Maybe overall on influencers and influencer impact, both on a cultural level, on a video game business level. Any thoughts here?
I mean, if the business works for him, well, then it works for him. So nothing else to say there.
By the way, because the last piece or story was because he started a studio with some really esteemed people, former Call of Duty people. 242 I forgot his name now. Former community manager on Call of Duty. And then I think that he left the company or the studio. They were working on some FPS game, and now it seems like okay, he's back doing streaming. Maybe not in that company anymore, the game company anymore, but maybe on a larger discourse from a influencer point of view. What kind of influencers obviously have risen significantly and have a much bigger impact on our business? What do we see in the for a smaller indie studio? They might not afford influencers. I mean, what can you tell us about the influencer business in impacting our game sales?
Well, the nice thing these days, everyone can be something like an influencer. I think that the term influencer is not even used that much these days anymore because it's so overused. And there's another term for that, but I've got it now. However, these days, what I recommend my clients is try something like TikTok, for example. TikTok enables us to become our own influencers with comparably easy ways. Even I wouldn't consider myself as an influencer. I don't have a lot of followers, but some of my videos also get random videos I just do on the job get 2,000 views or something like this on TikTok, which is okay for me for what I'm doing, right? And now imagine that you make your small indie game, maybe only 2-3 people or something like that. You're really engaged in this. Maybe you just finished your college degree and stuff, and now you work on something together. Having with each video about 1,000, 2,000 views, that is gold, right? And then convert a few of these people. Show them what you're working on, show them what kind of game you want to make, and maybe they love it, and maybe they will wishlist it and can't wait for it to release finally. So I would say try to become your own influencer a little bit, even though you wouldn't call it an influencer, but that is one of the cheapest ways. And if you can do it, well, work with influencers, definitely. I know I don't want to talk too much about that topic, but there's that really good strategy if you like a smaller studio to work with. Start with the influencers that don't have a lot of followers, because they feel happy if you write them and you ask them to play your game. And the thing is, the next tier influencers, they usually get inspired by the lower tier influencers. What are they playing? Is there something interesting for me as well? Because they are always looking for content, right? And if you get them convinced as well, then you can climb up that ladder. And that is a strategy I have been seeing playing out a few times, and that works for some studios. So, and try to make it as affordable as possible. So influencers can be expensive.
Patrick, when I'm talking to a lot of my clients these days, I usually recommend hire a community manager on 20% from day one. And it's, some people don't understand why, but for me, it's building your community very early and have those champions who are gonna people who are gonna champion your game. It's going to be more important. In previous episodes, we talked about cross media and doing cross media stuff. If it's a comic book, if it's whatever. But to your point, having starting small and building towards something is more important these days, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave the rumors part here. I mean, there's another one about there are some Twitch staff are concerned about layoffs later this year. I feel like this is the same kind of trend of companies over hiring and having too many people, but what's the word? Not that much impact, rather. But on the numbers part, there is a game. Have you heard about this game? Zombie survival game, 7 Days to Die. Finally released. It says here, after 3,878 days in early access. What can you tell us about this story?
So I want to talk about this. What release means actually. And I think this is something really interesting. We these days we have our terms in our heads. We want to put stuff in boxes, but actually, if you put a game in early access, that is a release. That is the release already, and call it early access or not, but it's a release. It's a marketing way of telling people, well, please be nice to us because it's not ready yet and stuff. But the story of Warframe, for example, I think Warframe was in early access for 7 years or something like that. And people played it already. They made a lot of money with that game already at that time. And it's to me, it's just a marketing thing, calling something early access and stuff. So you could also call it beta or call it free to play for now. And at some point it will cost something. It's just different terms for the same thing. And so, yeah, I think it's now a marketing move to say now we are ready for calling it actual release. We believe in our game now and everything. And it also gets them some more traction. I mean, they have this article now, for example.
Yeah.
So
it boosts the amount of touch points that you can have over the years. But what's interesting here, looking at 7 Days to Die, so you look at for those who are listening in, look at Steam charts and the trend of the game the past, 2004, that's almost 10 years-ish.
Yeah.
The game has just gained popularity. Right now it has 50,000 players, which is very, very interesting to see.
All right. I'm just realizing that 3,000 days is 10 years. Oh my God, I didn't.
I just realized it myself when I looked at the chart, Patrick. But this is I'm just confused now about these terms. And I agree with you that, early access. I mean, we saw Hades 2. I think it's still in early access, if I'm not mistaken. And for a developer like that who is very esteemed, who has an extremely positive track record, I'm not sure. Yes, the game Hades 2 is still in early access. It is a marketing ploy. Do players care? Do players, from your point of view, have you seen any indications from a player point of view, seeing through this, as in, oh, it's just another,
They will always treat it more nicely when they know it's early access. They will always say, okay, I purchased that. I knew I can't expect too much because it's early access and so on. And then people will always say, for early access, this is okay. But now finally give us the real release. Kind of like this. It always works, I think.
Okay. So, Patrick, we reached the end here. I'm going to read the take that the dashing Dave there wrote. So here's what he's wrote. The monkey's paw continues to curl on Microsoft's vision of an all-digital future. The Xbox 360 store shuts down. An updated failure cripples some Xbox Ones, and hardware sales are down bad. Despite that, there's money to be had for the company that now owns Call of Duty and Candy Crush, obviously. Patrick, I know you're a really good salesman. Okay, and I would love to hear where can people find you, follow you, all these things. You mentioned you had a TikTok, apparently.
Yeah, they can find me on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, and of course on LinkedIn specifically. And well, feel free to connect with me. I'm also going to release my online course soon, which is all about making successful games. How can you create a game that can make maybe $100,000 in revenue per day? I've been working on these games. I've been researching these games from a psychological angle, business angle, also marketing angle. And all this knowledge from the past decade I put together in one big course, which I'm going to sell soon. So if you're interested in that, feel free to connect with me, and you will find me on LinkedIn for certain.
That's amazing. I was just about to, by the way, but you obviously already did. I was about to mention you have a course, which is amazing. But obviously, for those listening in, if you want to check out our newsletter, every Friday morning, you'll get our newsletter, the Games Industry Executive Summary. Go to mightydiamonds.substack.com. And then if you want to visit our website, it's mighty.diamonds rather. You can find me across some channels as well. I go by the acronym or the nickname these days, bring more bread. Otherwise, LinkedIn is probably where you will be able to reach us the easiest. Patrick, this was a pleasure. We're almost doing a full hour, just me and you. I'm actually very surprised we managed to, get through this very unscathed for now. We'll see if this holds up. But I really appreciate your time. Really good stuff. Do stick around, Patrick, because I need you to upload the stuffs. Other than that, have a nice day, everybody, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye. I'll end the session.